Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. So in this episode, we kind of look, once again, doing what I love, finding out about characters' backgrounds. It's kind of focused a little bit on Chuck's background. In particular, in this case, he meets with his former boss and longtime mentor Nella, who's part of this fashion designer, and in fact this is fashion week and everything. Well, sadly she ends up dying, and it seems that she was poisoned with arsenic, and the top suspect is her one of the people that works underneath her will, which a lot of people didn't like her because she was very mean, and even Chuck will admit, yeah, she was very mean and rude, but it's something that him and Will could agree on. The fact is that if it wasn't for her, they wouldn't have the chances they have. That even though she was kind of mean and pushy, she pushed them and got them to be who they are now. Because the thing is, this is a very interesting case on many different levels, because this is another case where you actually have someone on the team kind of being against Bull. Obviously, it's kind of happened a little bit with Benny. Obviously, we know about Danny's situation. And this time, because Bull is trying to exonerate Will, but Chuck's like, no, all the evidence is saying it's him. Why are you going to help a guilty guy just because he's hurt? Because it's like someone that was very important to him died, and it's like, oh, there's this clear-cut suspect. There's all this evidence against him and everything. Well, Bull was like, no, that doesn't fit him. Bull doing the normal thing that he does. He kind of analyzes people, and he kind of uses weird things to kind of decide whether someone's guilty or not. It's like he uses something as a basis. For example, he's like, oh, do you play chess or checkers? And the dude is like, and Will's like, no. Because that means if someone plays chess or checkers in their free time, that means that they basically think a lot. They're kind of a strategist, that they plan stuff out. So that's kind of the mentality he had. And because of the evidence coming out that basically Will ended up stealing some shoes that Nella was kind of trying to get patent. The fact is that these shoes were worth hundreds of millions. It's like it gave him motive, and that pushed Chunk to not even want to work with him. But it is something that, both Benny as well as Cable kind of stick with him. At first it's Benny like, oh, the fact is, why Bull's taking this case is because he's taking it for you, because because this is something that means so much to you. He wants to make sure that the right person is going to jail. He's like, and Benny's like, and I know that more so than anyone else. You want that to happen, to be the right person, which is just like I said, it doesn't make it any easier, to the point that Chunk is not usually himself. He's usually fully calm, collected, but obviously this is a situation where it's like, yeah, you can understand why he'd be a little upset. To the point he's not even willing to help Will out. He's kind of giving Will the cold shoulder a little bit. Like when it came to trying to dress him up for the jury, because obviously the jury wouldn't like the way he's dressed, because he's kind of dressed like one particular juror wouldn't like it because he's dressed like the cool kids. Like whether you realize it or not, your clothing kind of represents, like, you express yourself through clothing even if you don't mean to. And Bull kind of broke down Cable, bringing up the fact is that, like, oh, she's trying to be hipsterish, but all it does, trying to create this unique air about her, but it's like all you do is make yourself look like, all it shows is that you're like every other hipster. So it just kind of gets rid of your uniqueness. And then he gets to Marissa. It's like, oh, the fact is Marissa wears heels, and like, now if I wasn't your boss, I would say that the fact is those heels complement your very lovely figure. And then Marissa's like, yeah, and if I weren't your employee, I would say thank you. It's just like, I even love the fact is that he brought her to the party and everything, and she's having fun. He's like, we're not here to have fun, we're here to just we're here to work. So, well, she looked very lovely in the dress. I like that design. Like, I always like white and black together as a design. If I had to, it's a weird thing I have. Like, if I had to put three colors together, it's kind of a nerdy reason why I like it. I won't get into it for this sake. I know, when do I ever do that? But it's like, it's really nerdy and I don't want to get into it. But I really like the colors green, black, and white, meld together. I love that just combination. I don't know. Not necessarily it could be like a design, like a dress that's part white, then it has like green lines through it, and then parts of it are black, like through the black parts are green lines. If you're nerdy enough, you might know where I'm pulling that design from. Maybe not. You might not get it. I would make that a game. If you can guess what nerdy thing, why those three particular colors, why I'm pulling that from, I will make it a little easier. It comes from a cartoon. That's all I'll leave it at. So if you feel like you know the answer, do put it in the comments down below. I will tell you if you're right or not. Not sure if you really get anything, but that's beside the point. Nevertheless, because basically it turns out that these heels are like a special type of heels that basically he designed. Will's kind of a gifted genius in this whole situation. And even Marissa put them on later on. She's like, oh my God, these are the greatest shoes ever. Like, I've never felt more comfortable in a pair of shoes. And she's like, yeah, they are revolutionary. Which, side note, I have to do my acting things. I know I literally went on a tangent, but the actor, I think his name is Matthew Rauch. He played Burton on Banshee. And let's not forget, Tristy Kelly Dunn was in the second episode of Bull as like the client. So I just thought, it's like, I know it's the little things. And the fact is that he's the one prosecuting Will this time. Apparently, he's kind of gained a reputation. His character's name is Neil Pike. That basically Bull's kind of aware of him. It's like he kind of pushes his weight around. He kind of bullies people into a confession, even if there's not 100% evidence. Because even all this evidence at first, before the tape popped up and everything, all the evidence was kind of circumstantial at best. It's like, yes, Will had access to the address and stuff, the email and all this stuff. Like there was no concrete proof. All of it was circumstantial. Also forgot too, might as well quickly add it into the actor who played John Carlo in this episode is also the actor who plays Scorsese from Lethal Weapon. The moment I saw, I was like, hey, Scorsese! Just had to do that too. Sorry. If you've listened to these, if this is your first time hearing these, I do that sometimes. I have to break from it. Like when I notice those acting things, I have to point them out. I just have to make a whole big deal about it. It's just my weird thing because I don't really have any other outlet to really do that. But so I kind of make these my outlet for that as well. There's even a point where Bull was kind of trying to like switch the narrative, make it so it's like, well, the only other person that might have had access to all this stuff is Kira, because his girl, Will's fiance, because the fact is that she was originally supposed to wear the dress, but she happened to leave. So Nella put it on and it ended up, obviously Nella ended up dying from the arsenic being on the dress. To the point that Bull was kind of like, at first Bull was like, he wanted to tell Will, but then you had Benny be like, no, don't, because obviously he'll tell her, she'll be a lot more prepared when I put her on the stand. So it's like, we need her not to know, but it's like the woman he loves and everything. So he's like, I have to give her that, I have to at least give Will that information ahead of time. So he tells Will, and he's basically, without saying it, this is me paraphrase, basically kind of wants Will to kind of throw Kira under the bus, because it's like, obviously, there's all this opportunity. She left and everything. Why did she leave? Oh, she just happens to get sick around that time and she left, and Nella just happens to die. It's like, don't you think that's a little circumstantial? The fact that she had access to the dress and everything. So it's like, can you really say for certain that she isn't guilty? And at the very least, it will give you enough like reasonable doubt so that the attention is taken away from you and pointed towards her. But then you have Will being like, I'm not going to do that to the person I love, the woman I want to marry. Because what that would do is, even if she is later on not like labeled as a killer, there will always be an asterisk by her name. Like in his words, he's like, I won't blacken her name, because it's like, there'll always be an asterisk like, oh, now it's like, oh, Kira, suspected killer, so it's like, he's not going to do that, especially to someone he loves and care about. And he's like, I'm sorry that you can't really understand that basically maybe that you like, because for Bull, and that's kind of something we learned in this episode, especially when he talks to Diana, it's the fact is that he doesn't tell her about the case and everything. Like for Bull, it does seem like he puts walls between him and people. For him, he always kind of like breaks people down on a many different level, and he doesn't let people do the same thing to him. He doesn't open up. Obviously, whatever his reasons being, maybe it's something dealing with his dad. As we know, his dad was kind of a criminal. His dad was kind of a bad guy. Probably didn't, a little bit we've heard, not necessarily the best childhood in certain circumstances. Like I said, we even heard that whole like story about his sister. So it's the reason why he's not big into ever, like why you never tell a secret. Obviously, that story that got brought up in the past. But it's a situation where it's like for him, it's like, even Diana kind of realizes, it's like, oh, you could come over, like, come on here to Texas or sometime. He's like, oh yeah, sure. She's like, no, I get it. It's too real. He's like, no, of course not. It's like, no, you can obviously tell that you're super bothered by it. You're trying not to be. You want to be good because like you like her and everything, but it makes it harder because the fact is that, it's just the way Bull is, the way he is, the way he's kind of built, he's very reluctant to kind of open up to people and everything, which obviously I can get behind that. I understand that. So what he does to other people, I tend to do myself. I overanalyze myself. That's just like part of my nature. That's kind of how my personality is kind of adapted and everything. So he kind of pushes Diana away, and I guess that's something that, Chunk kind of alludes to a little bit when he like breaks down how Bull dressed. The fact is that Bull dresses very professionally. I was wearing the same thing. Almost kind of basically Bull kind of puts up walls and everything, so people don't really get too close, I think. But it does seem like he is trying to break that, because when he looks at Will, and Kira, it does make you wonder, was he really trying to get Will to turn on her, or was he trying to see where Will really stood in all this? I think it's a situation where it's like, no, the case was developing and everything, and he was trying to see, that at the very least, is it like, are you willing to cast aside a person you love to save, if it means saving your own hide? Which is like, he's not that type of person, but that's why I was wondering if it was going to be that type of thing, but it seems like it was him just legitimately thinking it was Kira. The thing is, we end up finding out that obviously the killer is Giancarlo, because Kira seemed like she was a suspect because it's like, oh, she just happens to leave so suddenly, but the reason why she left is because Nella apparently fired her. But then it's like, wait, Nella didn't actually tell you she fired you. Who was it that actually told you? It's like, oh, Giancarlo told me. And then, that's what made Nella leave. I mean, that what made Kira leave. And then Giancarlo turned around and was like, oh yeah, Kira quit. So that forced Nella to wear the dress. So leading to that, because basically this all came down to the fact is why he ended up killing her. It wasn't out of competitiveness or anything like that, like other people, like Brent. That would have been his motive, because the fact is that they were competitors and everything. But in this particular case, it's because she fired him. The fact is he was humiliated, his pride and everything. It was kind of transference. What he did to Kira was because he wanted to pass, the way Bull kind of phrased it, pass the cruelty down. It was a situation of like, like I said, transference. He couldn't deal with being fired, so he tried to kill. Now, it's very interesting. I guess it's just a bloodthirsty world out there where it's just like, he spent so much time and effort there, and he thought, it's like, oh, I'm doing my job well, and it's like all of a sudden she's going to fire me. How dare you fire me? I'm Giancarlo. Like, that's... No, you don't have the right to, like, like I said, I brought it up early on. A lot of people don't like her. I think the way they make it seems like that's kind of the fashion world. That might be a stereotype, but it's just like, it seems like it's just naturally very competitive. And in that sense of just kind of like they're treated like crap. But I'm sure like any type of, because like I said, Nella kind of treat people like crap out of need of being like, to push them, like in Chuck's case and even Will's case, because Will had the whole idea, like obviously he made the shoes and everything, but he was thinking that Nella stole them and she was trying to patent him behind his back, which she was, because she made him delete any emails and stuff to prove that he made it, just because you won't want to take the chance someone steals the idea from him by reading his emails and stuff like that. So he's thinking the entire time, it's like, oh, Nella tried to do that. She tried to screw me over out of the whole deal, but it's like, no, she was actually keeping up her end of the bargain. She was trying to help him out, getting all patented and everything in his name. So. But what I also appreciate is the fact is that by the end of the episode, first of all, the fact is that Chunk and Bull are good again. Because obviously, Cable had that whole conversation. It's like, oh, she meant a lot to you. It's like, yeah, he was working for her for 2 years. Also, he ended up finding out that that's where Bull actually met Chunk 3 years ago, as is in that exact spot at the beginning when in front of the runway and everything. That was kind of interesting. Would have loved to get a little bit more elaboration on that whole situation, but I'll get to that. But get to what I was saying. This fact is, Cable's like, oh man, she meant so much to you, right? It's like, oh man, to be that committed to your boss, huh? Oh man, being that committed to your boss, huh? And then even Chunk kind of got what she was kind of beaten at. Kind of like, yeah, the fact of the matter is, Bull, I not like the way Bull does things, but at the very least you understand why he's doing this, because, Bull sees something and he's trying to make sure that things are going the right way. So it's like, at the end, Chunk was like, I'm not doing this for Will, I'm doing it for your sake. Which is like, because him and Will are kind of kindred spirits. They grew up in that world. They were mentored by the same person. She's a bit of a hard ass, but at the very least she was caring in her own way, because in the end, she actually was going to make Will her second in command. I forgot that's actually, no, going back to it, because I almost let that slip my mind. That is the competitive angle. That's why Giancarlo got pissed, because he got fired, and a newcomer like Will was going to be her new second in command. So once again, bringing back that competitive nature I was bringing up earlier. Almost completely forgot that. It was what that was about too. So, but luckily everything is good between him and Kira. So go off, be happy and everything. He's like, Bull being like, oh, you're very lucky. So glad to see things are working on that front. And it seems like things are working good on the Bull and Diana front, because obviously the episodes will kind of make it seem like, oh man, that's not going to work. I hope it does, because obviously you already have this like very flirtatious relationship and everything, but it's like it's like I said, more so than anything, Bull seemed like the most reluctant to make moves, because she's like, oh yeah, like the fact is that he wouldn't open up to her about what she's up. Wait, he's up to, because obviously she didn't tell him exactly what she was up to, because like he's like, oh, the fact is that you start talking dirty when you're trying to do, what was it, like her opening statement or something like that is usually when she kind of talks dirty, which is kind of interesting that he knows her like that. It's there, but it's just like he's just afraid to take those steps forward. But I guess like seeing their situation, the fact is he was willing, she wanted him to stand and fight, and he was kind of willing to stand and fight for her. It's like, no matter what the situation is, just talk to me, let me know what went down. So I guess that kind of inspired Bull too. So, and the fact is that he's got a new assistant, because obviously he has problems with. Did we ever meet any of his previous assistants? It's just kind of a thing they brought up this episode. Like, oh yeah, I got a new assistant. Her name is Allie. I do hope we get to see her from time to time. I love the fact that she pops up from the episode from time to time, and she's very candid and stuff like that. She's like, oh man, like, just kind of a lot of fun, and I feel like someone that probably could balance a little bit of who Bull is. She's like, oh, someone's got to keep him in line. So this is going to be, I hope we get to see more of her going forward in the future, since they went through the trouble of adding her as like his assistant. Like I said, we never really got to see his assistants at any point. Maybe we did, and I just didn't recognize it at the time, but it'd be kind of interesting to see that that dynamic change, because obviously, because we never, like I said, that's something too, we've never actually seen more of the team outside of the main protagonist. We've never really tapped into like other people that were attacked and everything, and be like, oh yeah, it's this and that. It's like, oh, it's just like the main group of people. So overall, a very good episode. I'm very excited to see what goes on in the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.